Hello and welcome to episode 3 of LPM Tiger Team with Access Legal, a series of webcasts where a wide range of experts come together to analyze and address some of the most pressing issues facing SME legal today. So far in this series, we've addressed building more client centricity within the law firm and engaging a restless workforce. You can find both those episodes on our website. Today, our topic is finding your firm's competitive advantage, where we'll be addressing key issues of themes of proposition, pricing, messaging, etc. My name is Aftab Bose. I'm the editor for LPM. And our panel for today is a wide range of experts who can bring various angles to this rich discussion today. Matt Newton co-founded Usha in 2008 and has been commercial director for Usha at Access Legal since the firm was acquired by the latter in August 2021. With a background in marketing, Matt has well over a decade of experience in the tech solution space and is also certified in B2B product management from the Chartered Institution of Marketing. Martin Wincup is an associate director for marketing at Berwins, a full-service law firm based in Harrogate and Leeds with over 50 headcount. Martin has also been trained at the Chartered Institute of Marketing and holds more than a decade of marketing experience. He joined Berwins in 2019. Sarah Blackwell is the Sales and Marketing Director at Greenwoods, a full-service law firm with over 120 headcount and offices in Cambridge, London, and Peterborough. Sarah has been at Greenwoods for over 20 years, holding a variety of roles in the marketing and BD space. Colin Willett is a business development, marketing, and change specialist at Thompson Smith and Puxon, a full-service law firm based in Colchester, with a headcount of over 70. Colin has been in the marketing game since 1996, having held senior roles at Burkitt Long, Ashton's Legal, and Clyde & Co., among others. And last but not least, we have Richard Hill, who's the CEO at Stepien Lake, a 30-strong niche commercial property law firm based in London's West End. Richard is a chartered management accountant and is past chair of the Institute of Legal and Finance Management, where he sits on the executive board and also provides management training for its members. Thank you all very much for joining us today. Hopefully we can bring a lot of different angles, make it a nice, fruitful discussion. Before I kick off, could I quickly hand over to Matt, who's our partner for this session, to say a few words?
Thanks, Aftab. Really pleased to be part of this Tiger Team discussion, representing Access Legal. At Access, we are very much focused on the area of competitiveness for law firms. Law firms, regional or some of the top 100 are so all law firms, whether they be regional or whether they be city-based, are all operating within a challenging market. Margin is under pressure, new competitors coming in, whether it be the big four accounting practice, whether it be new startup online specialist law firms. So very much we see the sector feeling the pressure as to maintain competitiveness. And at Access Legal, we obviously believe that technology is the key to be able to deal with those pressures, to be able to maintain competitiveness and grow your law firm. So yeah, super happy to be involved today and looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks for setting the context there, Matt. As you said, lots of varying disruptive factors that are causing the competitive landscape to become more challenging than ever. And one of the, I suppose, moving to our first point of discussion today, one of the strategies to counter a landscape like this is always to have a unique selling point, a USP, a place where you hold a place that you hold in the market. But if we start in the context of a full service law firm, it's actually quite challenging to have this kind of core message, a unique message, understand what your unique selling point is when you're trying to appeal to such a wide range of people and wide range of practice areas. So if I could just come to you, Martin, to start us off, as a full service law firm, how is it that you've gone about understanding what you stand for and how have you tackled this kind of balancing act?
Yeah, I think absolutely right, After as you said, as a full service law firm, there's plenty of firms out there doing very, very similar things. So I think what we think the most important thing is what we deliver and how the clients at the end of the day finish that they get. So service is really, really important. And that sort of culture of care really has been what sits at the heart of Berwins now and has sat really since the firm was founded. And that's key to our brand. but it's also really important that we actually deliver on it, because anyone can say, we do a great job. So one of the things that we've done as a firm, sort of 4 or 5 years ago now, we sat down with everyone, from sort of assistant up to director, and talked about actually what do they think the firm's about, what do they think Berwins represents, what matters to them. And really pleasingly, what they said was what we sort of told clients and spoken to them about that mattered. It was that care, it was that service, it was that sort of premium feel. So, off the back of that, we were able to create a document we've termed as baseline, which basically means that we can use that as a yardstick to see if what we're doing works, is right. And we can use it internally as well to say, well, actually, this is where we're all about. We use it a lot with new starters. We use it to make sure really make sure that experience that we promise is being delivered.
And in terms of trying to balance, let's say, having a full service with actually appealing to and having some kind of specialism, you've also tried to strategically go into sub-brand as a way of kind of making that differentiation. Could you tell us a bit more about how you've gone about that?
Yeah, so one of the areas that we're really strong in is in digital, so in tech law. And one of the challenges, I guess, that was that we would talk to a digital firm, a agency or whatever it was, and we'd say we have all this expertise, but it's very hard to cut through on, say, a website on merchandise which talked about probate and family law. So we created a sub-brand, Berwins Digital, which kind of has helped a lot. So we have a tagline about being specialist lawyers for digital businesses, and having that sub-brand, having that really clear way of differentiating what we do, has enabled us to actually say, well, actually, this is what we do now. It's enabled us to talk differently to clients. It's enabled us to talk about specifics and technical stuff that matter to them. We've seen various firms try and come into that market space without that differentiation, without that clear understanding or clear demonstration that they know what they're talking about. We're able to differentiate that way, and that's been a real help in that tech world.
Sarah, if I could just bring this to you in terms of differentiation of messaging, because obviously, as Martin said, you're trying to reach a client that needs a certain amount of specialty, but there's also different clients have different expectations from one region to the next. They also have different expectations from one practice area to the next. So could you tell us a bit about how you've tried to come across this balancing act also as a full service law firm?
Absolutely, and lots of parallels with all of the things that Martin mentioned. We've done similar exercises in the past as well, and I can't agree more. It's absolutely crucial to help refine the message and help everybody to get behind that message and sell that message. We found as our business has evolved that we're at a point now where we need to do that again. We're finding that our brand we need it to do different things for us in different locations. So some service lines we have are much stronger than others, and we need that brand to deliver that for us. And equally within our marketplaces as well, we might need our brand to do something different in the Cambridge marketplace and something different again in the London marketplace, and nuanced again in Peterborough. We began our business in Peterborough. It's a mature marketplace. We're strong there, but we're at different positions in the marketplaces in Cambridge and London, and we need the brand to do something different for us. So I really am interested in the sub-brand approach that Martin mentioned. That's certainly something that we're thinking about, but we're also trying to make our brand, in the review we're taking part that's happening at the moment, we want to make that core values, that core of what makes Greenwoods GRM in there, but we want to be able to dial it up and dial it down, if you like, so that it can mean something slightly different in the London marketplace without undermining what we're trying to do in Peterborough and in Cambridge. So it's actually a really exciting time for us, because there's nothing more exciting than talking to people within your organisation about what's important to them, and we've involved lots of people in those discussions. Yeah, so it's going to be really exciting to see if we can make it have that core that can work in different ways, but still bring those values that are true to Greenwoods GRM to the marketplace in whichever way we need.
And so that there's that agile approach of being able to kind of dial it up, dial it down, go to different markets at different times. But also within your firm, is it challenging to kind of balance the messaging from one service area to the next, to have this core, but also have so many different service areas? How is that something that you've tried to address internally?
Through talking and communicating and trying to increase the understanding that people have about what colleagues who are in different teams or focusing on different sectors need. I don't know about the experience of others, but we were slightly concerned that with so much working from home, our lawyers were thinking more team and less firm. So we've put in lots of initiatives to try and get conversations going across the firm, both within separate locations and across locations too, so that people think firm as well as thinking team, because we see that as a really important part of collaboration, which is key to competitiveness in our view.
Right. Colin, if I could just take this to you now, because I mean, the inherent assumption with both these so far has been that you have to have this kind of core message, and that it is important to have this core message. But is there any point in the legal industry, at least when you're a full service law firm, to chase a unique selling point, to have a core selling point, and how do you kind of go about that task?
So let me start by pushing back on the idea of the USP. I actually professionally abandoned it some years ago. The idea that you can find something utterly unique is pretty rare. If I've never come across it, to be honest, in my career. And what I substitute that for is another three-letter acronym called JSD, because I think what realistically we hope for to reach, and what others should, is just to be just sufficiently different from the rest. And to do that, you need to be just sufficiently better. So if you break that down, what does that mean? Well, essentially, when you're looking at what a proposition might be and what a brand is, you're talking about what you do and how you do it. And it's, in terms of differentiation, in terms of the law, of course, it's incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to differentiate what we do. We do the law, that's it. We can't really influence the output of legislation currently, so we can't do it ever. So what we tend or should focus on is not what we do, but how we do it. And there's been a lot of really quite innovative ways in which we can deliver law, to deliver what we do in different ways. This is the how. So my advice really would be, stop looking for the holy grail of stop something USP. I don't think it exists. I think the hearts and minds in the legal world is one, not so much in terms of the legal expertise. I think that's largely taken for granted. I think the battle is in the hearts and minds is in terms of the service element. So if I'm looking to differentiate, if I'm looking to abandon the USP, I'll be looking at trying to find ways in which we are just sufficiently better than the competition at what we do to give us that edge. And I think that's a much more realistic approach to kind of this element of positioning in the marketplace.
And how do you reconcile that with the importance of messaging, with the value of messaging? Because obviously service delivery comes, and the quality just sufficiently better comes beyond having already won a client and delivered a service better. But in terms of that initial attraction, in terms of the messaging to actually win new clients.
I think there's a real danger here in promoting a lot of empty words, because what we often do, and we're all guilty of it, I've certainly been guilty of it in the past, is coming up with a clever strapline which we think solves the problem. In fact, it doesn't do it at all. So we all talk about being customer centric, but what does that actually mean? Well, what it means is looking at the world through your customer's eyes. And one of the things, again, which I would recommend is if you have something you want to promote, if you found something in which you can be just sufficiently different, test it on your customers. Ask your customers to form part of a project group or whatever name you want to call it, and test it. Get their input into your proposition, and they'll soon tell you if it makes sense, if it has legs, if it's nonsense. And I would also say, so therefore, in terms of the proposition, be very careful between what I call the mission and the aspiration. Keep the aspiration indoors, keep it internal. Don't go external with a big aspiration, because if you fall flat on it. Years ago, I was involved in a branding exercise where someone wanted to put top into their brand proposition. and we had to fight like now to get it out, because you could imagine the first time that they failed to deliver, someone's going to question this top bit. It didn't make any sense. So keep our aspirational words internal. However, the mission is different. The mission defines what it is you do and how it is you do it. And you do need to do that to be what's called a purpose-driven company. A purpose-driven company has a clear purpose and makes that purpose known, not just externally, but internally. But test that. Test the proposition with the people that are supposed to respond to it. Don't rely on the clever marketeers. Use them to formulate it, and use your customer base as your absolute litmus test for all of this.
And leading on from this point of really using service delivery and customer perspective as a starting point, I mean, Richard, you obviously operate a very niche, very specialist law firm. So your competitive arena goes beyond the USP. You already have the USP. What you compete on is a whole other range of factors within your niche, within other competitors in your niche. Could you tell us about how you kind of what you focus on to compete in that world?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we initially have an easier starting point because our message is quite clear. Being niche commercial property, this is what we do. All we do is property. So straight away, our message is quite clear. I think from our point of view, being niche in property isn't enough. We actually look at sort of sub niches as well. So we look at different areas in development, strategic land, and sometimes mines and minerals. These certain areas that we do have the clients and expertise to actually differentiate ourselves that one step further to be able to compete in certain areas. I think also what has changed over the last 10 to 15 years is niche firms can actually now compete for work that's tend to have in the past done by larger law firms. And I think picking up on Matt's point as well, the use of technology has allowed that, and that's an area that we've been focused on. Actually, we are competing for work in areas where probably some of the larger firms have done in the past. And I think the way we've been able to do that is through our credibility in a way. You look at the partners, and this tends to be a lot of niche firms like this, not just us. They tend to have partners that have come from large law firm experience that give clients some comfort. You know, they have an array of experience as well in different types of work projects. Their clients speak for themselves and give them that credibility. But it's not just their clients. I think it's also, in our case as well, it's the credibility in the relationships that they have as well. On our part, we can connect people together to do certain property deals. So someone wants to invest or a client wants to sell land, we can connect them. And that makes a property transaction come across that we can then act on. I think picking up on Martin's point as well, it's key also not just to be a legal advisor. You should be a business partner to your clients and actually understand what they want to try and integrate the legal advice you give into their business to make their lives easier as well. I think another thing that's quite important that we tend to forget is, especially in a niche area, so you have the experts, but actually surrounding it with good business management, making sure the finances, managing people, marketing, operations. I think that's absolutely key as well, is actually have the business management right. So it's not just being able to say we offer a great service, you should make sure we deliver that service, which is everyone's saying this morning. So I think they're the main areas that we've been able to focus on. I think being smaller makes us a little bit more agile. We can react a lot quicker than larger law firms that tend to have different partner views, some red tape, policies. I think niche firms can now adapt to clients' needs much quicker in the past than some of the larger firms offering the same service.
And bringing the same question kind of from Colin's side, because obviously service delivery, credibility, etc., it comes beyond a certain point of having already started that initial conversation. But moving on the messaging and trying to kick off, spark those initial conversations, that initial engagement. What is it that you kind of have been doing in that area?
I think the first thing we probably do is I think lawyers are very, in the past, been able to sell. And I know if you use the word sell to a lawyer, they have a panic attack about that. But being able to, lawyers are very good to say how much it will cost a client buy our services. I think the key thing is actually explaining how we will do these things. And we have things such as apps and extranets. So in other words, key information, data rooms that can be provided to the client. This is how we're going to manage the transaction. We have sources of information that can help them through a transaction as well. I think it's clear from the start. And I think it's very clear that communication to actually explain the value you're giving on property transactions and helping the client through the property transaction, rather than just saying this is what it's going to cost you. I think actually adding some of the things that will help them get the property deal done is the most important thing, is adding that value to see how you can help the clients.
If I can just bring this to you now, Matt. I mean, you definitely seem to have seen the light in the last few minutes, but if you could just bring some of that enlightenment to how, I mean, commenting on all these things, whether it's sub-brands, whether it's having the agility, the right agility, using digital for competitiveness, not having USP, focusing on credibility. What role does tech play in any of that, in all of that?
I suppose the starting point is to say that tech is there's not a magic wand, which is tech. Basically, there's no shortcuts. We've seen firms over recent years do what we call random acts of technology. So it's a case of, right, okay, I know I need to stay competitive. Tech is the answer. Let's spend some money in a with the latest and best kind of technology. There's no shortcuts. It's got to start with the business strategy. In terms of, right, okay, well, to understand their business, what the vision is, what the proposition is, and especially in a full service law firm where the spending of a marketing buck or a technology buck has to be focused in the right areas to be most profitable and to position the firm well. So the first thing is you've got to start with the right strategy. Tech is not a shortcut. Tech comes after to be able to enable that vision, that strategy. And the firms that have done that really well, they've started with the client with not just a business view in terms of what the proposition that they would like to deploy, but also then speak to the prospective client. We've seen some great firms such as Thornton's up in Scotland with Sarah Blair as an IT director, working with the Service Academy in Dundee to do service design workshops with their clients to understand, right, okay, this is our proposition, this is how we want to deliver services to you. Is that in line with your expectations? And once you've got that map, then you can start filling tech into there. And certainly we're seeing specialist law firms able to do that more effectively, to spend that marketing buck on a more of a narrow proposition, and therefore, look towards automating and getting those efficiencies in the process. In terms of starting those engagements, where we've also technically worked really well, firms such as Tozer's in Exeter, Family Law down in Brighton, their websites have become more than just brochures, and you're starting to see firms give away some of that secret sauce of advice to potential clients without cost. So to be able to attract clients, get them used to engaging with the brand, and do their own research before picking up those conversations. Law firms have to understand that across the economy, consumers on board with suppliers much later. So the buying cycle, it used to be that a prospective client would walk into a law firm and the whole engagement would start off face to face, and the law firm would very much be in control of that process. Well, the consumers now do their own research the various firms, research the services on offer, and on board in that buying process much later. So law firms have to react to that. And where technology can come in is, creating, being innovative with websites, with some AI or chatbots or something like that, to be able to give some advice for free. And the evidence is that if you give that little bit for free, they will most likely come back to you for the rest of that process. So yeah, tech can very much play a place, but it's got to be as part of a business strategy, not just a quick fix.
Right, thanks for that. And coming back to this business strategy, but moving this discussion kind of to a different arena of competitiveness. I mean, obviously, when I come around again, feel free to ping back on any of the points that have come up so far. But moving on to, I mean, another key part of your proposition, which holds as much, if not more weight than your messaging, is your pricing. Is where you stand in the market, what clients you're appealing to, and the idea is that it can make a big difference, especially in the context of what Matt was saying with bigger firms that have more tech efficiencies. They can really control their margins better, so they can really price you out of the market. So in terms of how the SME market can compete on pricing, if we can just address that issue around the room. But I'll start with you, Colin, to set out really how firms should think about their pricing, they should first start out addressing their whole pricing strategy.
Okay, so again, let's start with something I think you shouldn't do. I think what you shouldn't do is just look at as price through the eyes of an accountant. There's nothing wrong with that world, but it isn't the world we live in. We live in a different world. And for us, price is a mirror. It reflects what you are trying to sell. And generally speaking, the higher the price, the higher the level of the expectation the client has of that service. It's clear. So law generally is not inexpensive. And I think, therefore, in terms of pricing, in terms of starting a pricing strategy rather than just randomly pricing, I think you need to start from a very simple proposition, which is value for money. Very number of people are trying to define what value for money means, how you can use it. And I've come across years ago a very simple equation, which I use all the time, which is as follows, which is CV, which is consumer value, is equal to PB, which is perceived benefits minus price. So let's look at that in some numerical terms. If you could quantify perceived benefits as being 10 and price being 5, then 10 minus 5 means the consumer value is 5, it's positive. But what it also suggests that if you change price upwards, unless you change the value or the perceived value, then you're actually going to be delivering less value to your client. And therefore, let's start with another myth. No one buys price. There isn't a person on earth who has ever bought price. Show me someone that's bought £9.99. It's not. What people buy is the value that they see that the price of that particular service or product gives them. So every day of the week, all the time, we, you, everybody are going through that decision in their buying. Is what I'm buying giving me more than I'm paying for it in my own perception? And therefore you come down to looking at price not as a standalone, but you must look at it, I feel, in terms of associated the value. And there is something called value pricing, which is trying to understand what the service or product means to your client. And there are some techniques you can do in terms of talking to your clients about what does this service really mean to you? What is the value to you? And out of that, you can get some pretty unique pricing. But overall, start with that idea about look at price, but in relation to the V, price and value. What is the price? What are the values? Are you really clear about what it is you're delivering? What is the benefit structure of the service you are bringing? So start by looking at the key benefits that you can bring. If you can articulate them, then you can communicate them. But if you haven't thought about it, then you can't. So it will come down to, and one of the key things, someone mentioned, selling being anathema to lawyers. Well, one of the things that I've found over the years is lawyers are pretty poor at defending their price. So they'll give a price and then immediately jump in with some justification of it. Actually, what you need to do is to be able to say, this is the price of whatever it is. And the reason it's this price is because X, Y, Z, because it's delivering these. So to reinforce, to be able to defend your price means being able to, firstly, at the beginning, being very clear about the benefits and the value that your service or services or generally are bringing to bear on the market.
Right. So there's obviously really a lot of work to do in understanding your value and defending your value in the market. That's one route to competitiveness. But Richard, if I could just tie that into also the structure of pricing that law firms traditionally use, and something that you've been experimenting with is changing that itself, is to moving over to something more fixed. Could you tell us a bit about what the rationale behind that is and how that ties into actually understanding your value?
Yeah, I mean, we've been using fixed fees for years now. I think with pricing, I agree with Colin on the value point. It's also about alignment, and it's as best as you can align what's good for the firm and the client. Now, that can be challenging. It's certainly not about racking up lots of hours of time recording that will annoy the client, but be more profitable for the firm. Equally, it's not about discounting fees that the firm's worked hard on due to fear of annoying the client. There has to be a balance and an alignment. And I think that's the trick with pricing, whether that's fixed fee or on an hourly basis. As an example, something we have done if we're working on a property transaction development startup, the client doesn't really have much money coming in, but the law firm's done a lot of work, which could be £10,000–15,000. So you can either say, if you pay us now, we'll discount to 12. If not, when the first sale of one of the units, it's going to be 15. Take into account cash flow, but you have to align it with the client's needs as well to take into account, and therefore they might be willing to pay more the fact that you do that, which means payments can be prompter as well. So I don't think it's just one method. I think it's a method, it's about that alignment with yourself and the client. In terms of fixed fees, I think one of the main benefits from that is obviously clients want certainty. I think the hourly time recording can be more beneficial to the firm, but clients tend to not like that. We consistently hear as a profession that clients find it expensive and uncertain when it's on an hourly basis. So I think fixed fee does have some advantage. It gives that certainty. I think also the price, I don't think is just about trying to avoid, you have to avoid competing just on price, because you're just going to get lower and lower, and therefore it won't be profitable. I think one of the advantages of the fixed fee is also it has more of an outcome focus. It's not just around what the lawyer's putting, it's actually what the client's getting. So actually you're focusing on more about achieving a goal rather than just racking up hours. The disadvantage, I think, moving to a fixed fee, it assumes that it's been done correctly. You understand the overheads of the firm and what's profitable and what's not. Sometimes many lawyers just put a finger in the air and think this feels about right, and that won't annoy the client. I don't think that's really the best way to price legal work. I think the other pressures with fixed fee are overheads are rising at the moment. I think that can certainly be a challenge, can be a disadvantage, the danger that you can make the work. Your quote for fixed fee can certainly be too low. I think if it is too low as well, the real danger I see is actually disincentivizing the staff and the fee earners and solicitors doing that work. If it's priced too low, that actually the service, they may not be motivated to provide that service as best as they possibly can because that fixed fee has been too low. So that can be quite an advantage if you disadvantage, sorry. If you start competing on price with the fixed fees, you certainly find yourself going lower and lower. But I think the main point, really trying to align that your goals and the clients as best as you can, just so you can make sure that you get the right price for your work, but the client feels they have value and value for money.
Going back to one of the points you made there, is that something that's unique to your particular niche? Because if you're tying your fee to outcomes rather than process, because a lot of practice areas might not be able to guarantee that outcome. Is that something that you're able to do because you can, in your particular niche, deliver an outcome you're sure you can? Is that?
In certain work, yes, but as we all know, a client will say, this is a really simple job, and it turns out not to be a simple job. There's different moving parts, things take a lot longer, other things then crop up that you weren't aware of. So I think in terms of using the fixed fee, it can certainly work, but you have to be very clear in communications with clients that this is based on these assumptions. It doesn't include this, but it does include this. So therefore, if it then goes off to another area where actually it was including the price, you can have that conversation with clients. So that's really key in terms of managing the actual fees and providing a fixed fee. In our area, it's just mainly for property work. Clients have budgets. They have to put forward a development or an investment to a board or an appraisal. So therefore, they would like some certainty or estimate of what the work would cost them. That's why we've always tried to use fixed fee, because it's what the clients want, and it's best for us to provide that for them in their budgeting as well. It certainly doesn't work on all transactions. We do some hourly charging as well, but the client's fully aware of that. And again, that's more beneficial to the client as well, because they don't know how much time it's going to take themselves as well. So it's not just about one pricing, it's just fitting the pricing to not only the clients and what they perceive as value, but also the type of work it is a fair point.
Right, thanks. That's right. So Martin, there's obviously there's a range of points here, right? There's understanding your value, defending your value, aligning it with what the client wants. There's the fixed fee structure. There's so many different options out there. So where do you stand in this debate as a firm? Like, how have you approached your pricing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of sort of crossover actually with what Richard and Colin have touched on there, really. I mean, we'll use various different pricing methods. Some people do like hourly rates still, but there's a lot of fixed fee, there's other things in there. I think whatever you're doing, it's really important that we'll take the approach to look at what the client's trying to achieve and work with them and really keep that communication going. It's really important to scope out the work as well, so you're really clear with what is and isn't going to be included within a fixed fee or within whatever pricing. And have that conversation. If you're partway through a corporate transaction and a massive piece of litigation falls into it, well, that's not going to be included within the scope. And I think clients are reasonable about that. They understand that. And we've managed to sort of get, you're right, lawyers don't like justifying price. We've managed to avoid a lot of those sort of difficult conversations because we're having that open conversation with clients. We're keeping them informed about what's going on, talking about the value that we're sort of delivering. And through that, our pricing structure, we don't pretend to be a low cost, high volume firm. That wouldn't work for us. That's not the market that we're in. And that's why we've, going back to my earlier points, thinking about the brand and the quality of the expertise and service that we offer. That's why we put a huge amount of focus on that. So that, I suppose, similar to the equation that Colin mentioned, we're able to justify having a slightly more premium price and ensuring that clients get the service and the outcome ultimately. We can't always impact that that they're looking for.
Right. And you mentioned that there's obviously some differentiation, that some areas do offer fixed pricing, some are hourly rates. Is that correct? So in terms of...
Yeah, I mean, it would depend. I mean, in theory, we could offer hourly rates on anything. I mean, you would be very unlikely to on something like residential conveyancing or most property work. We would try and give the client some options and say, look, we could work on this way. We could look at a fixed fee. We might look at a slightly different way. We might look at a different way of pricing that. It's talking to them and finding a way that works for them. One thing that amazes me a lot of the time is that law firms, I suppose historically, will just give one price or one way of pricing that doesn't actually make sense to the client, and they'll have a 2, 3, 4-page document explaining how wonderful the client care document is and whatever, but it doesn't actually speak to the client and it doesn't make sense to them. So communicating in a way that actually the client gets is the key thing, I think.
How do you manage that internally if there's differentiation from client to client? How do you manage that? Where does that decision rest on how to price a particular matter?
So yeah, I mean, some areas will be fairly standard. Others where there are various things to look at, where different, if you're doing a big corporate transaction, you might be involving employment, you might be involving litigation, you might have property, you might have different elements in there. There'll be a lawyer that leads on that who looks at what they're going to do, what they think's right, and then we'll have a second pair of eyes or a discussion about actually whether that pricing's right. Invariably, actually, it may go up, it may go down. It depends on where the client sort of perceives it and where the lawyers value their time. I think we're pretty good at it now.
Right. Thanks for that. And Sarah, if I could just also pose a similar kind of open question to you about where you kind of stand in the spectrum and what your thoughts are.
Well, I think so many great contributions already. I'm not sure what else there is for me to add. I was really pleased, Martin, that you mentioned offering clients options. That's something that we found very successful. You can't second guess whether a client is looking for certainty or whether actually they're happier to take more of a risk and to price on a different basis, and having those open conversations and talking to them about what's important to them, whilst picking up on your point, Richard, about being really aligned in terms of what the business needs and what the client needs. That we found is really important. Helping our lawyers to be able to sell their prices better is definitely something that's worked for us too, and that links back to the work that we've been doing around the brand, because they understand what the value the client will achieve as a result of working with us in comparison to maybe going somewhere else for a less expensive fee, or indeed going somewhere else for a more expensive fee, just weighing up the value that the client's going to achieve. So I think I definitely support all of the things that I've heard, particularly about making sure that you put the client at the heart of the pricing strategy, bringing the value, offering options, and making sure that everything's aligned with great quality scope. You've communicated clearly that everybody understands, and again, keeping that dialogue open so that if things change, clients are not unreasonable, and having a conversation if something's different, something else has happened that needs to be priced separately. If you do it in the right way, it's generally successful, because that shows that you focused on the relationship you have with the client as opposed to anything else.
And in practice, is that something you've seen, for example, if we take Colin's equation of understanding what your value is? Obviously, you said that your lawyers are getting better at understanding what their own value is, but is that something you're seeing work out in practice? Most clients tend to also agree with your equation, with your valuation, or is it something that it's a constant struggle?
I think not a constant struggle, but I think it's always a challenge to make sure that you're pricing it correctly, you're getting the client on board, you're communicating that value to the client. And I think that gets better with practice, and the more that you do it, and generating some confidence from the fact that you really understand what your organisation is about, and you really understand the value that the client will receive from working with you in comparison to working with another firm. So not a struggle, but something that is important for all of us to work on, I think, across all of our organisations.
And in terms of really quickly tying it to messaging, just finally, because as Martin said, he doesn't brand himself as a low cost, high value firm. So is that, how important is it, or how much of a factor should your pricing structure or the way you price yourself or value yourself play in the way you message outwards and engage with prospective clients?
Okay, so I don't think price will generally be a starting point in terms of the conversations that we're having with clients. That doesn't tend to be something that comes up in conversation straight away. When we're trying to win new business, we're talking about what we can offer them. And when we've got to a point where we really feel they understand what our service could, the value they'll receive from our service, then we might start to talk about costs. But we'll always do it from the point of view of, what are you looking to achieve? Do you have a budget? How can we make it work? So from the outset, it's always part of a continuing dialogue. But similarly to Martin's organisation, we're not a practice that's kind of low value, high margin type practice. That's not right for us. Lots of law firms out there in the marketplace make that work super successfully, but that's just not the way that we're organised as a firm.
And coming to you, Matt, I mean, there's obviously the fact that, on pricing, one of the biggest challenges tends to be competition from firms that are digitally competitive and manage to cut their margins. So if you could just bring in some of that discussion about where pricing can become a more competitive factor, because at the moment it seems like it's not an integral part of the competitiveness conversation, but it could become pretty quickly.
I think that agree with everything that everybody said. I suppose the thing that's missing there is how do you make these decisions in the first place? And we're seeing the firms that use data more effectively as those that get, that are able to meet some of these challenges. So data used more effectively will give you the historical landscape as to what your pricing situation has been over recent years, so you can make better, get better pricing consistency going forward, identify any hidden costs, so the strategy when it comes to pricing in many law firms hasn't changed in many years, and it is a bit subjective, ad hoc, anecdotal in its structure. So I would urge firms to start with data. That will allow them to get an historical picture, but then also set the right expectations to the clients as well. So data is absolutely key. Now that's a real challenge for a lot of law firms. Had a conversation, with a small law firm the other day, senior partner, trying to move forward their tech strategy and make better business decisions based on data, but they've got 6 or 7 disparate systems, and actually doing the analysis of that data to be able to make decisions, it's a 3-day process. So I'd urge firms to look at business, BI, Power BI, to be able to lock into those systems. Or there's firms such as ourselves at Access Legal that are bringing together multiple products that's backed up with a data warehouse, so that there's better analytics being presented through dashboards continuously to decision makers, so that they can identify, basically improve the decision making, improve consistency, increase efficiency, identify where the areas of their workflows are that are holding margins back, and maybe look at automation and bring then once again tech into that to be able to improve efficiencies. So I would just urge people to start off by looking at data. and then build from there.
Thank you for that, and thank you all. I mean, those are really, really good points on both the kind of key areas we've addressed, which is balancing your proposition with your messaging and your pricing. If I could just finally go around the room for like a quick 2 minutes on for one, I think it'd be interesting to understand, because we've heard a lot from Matt about how technology can help, about the automation, about the data analysis and pricing. It'd be really nice to hear what your kind of journey is, where you are on the journey of actually using tech to make these decisions, and what the persistent challenges are. And then if you could just end each of you with some on a slightly lighter note, is if we were to give you an LPM magic wand today and say that you could eliminate one barrier or add something to your firm that would really boost its competitiveness, what it would be. Let's start with you, Sarah.
So I completely agree in terms of data, Matt. We've got a really good base of information to help us with those pricing decisions, and we've got various tools on dashboards that will enable people to try and price jobs effectively. So absolutely. If I had a magic wand, I think I would want all of my lawyers to really love going out and selling the firm. Lots of them do, lots of them are good at it, but I'd really like more of them to enjoy it and actually come back being enthused about the feeling you get when you might have found a new opportunity to deliver a fantastic service to a new client. So just hoping that even more of the lawyers that we have can get a buzz out of that kind of win.
Cheers for that. Richard, your tech journey and your magic wand.
Yeah, we've been using tech to automate in areas of property where we can through workflow for our sales for house builders. So that has been an area we've done for the last 10 to 15 years. I think real-time reporting as well, linked to the workflow as well. So the sales team at house builders can see all of the latest updates when properties are selling. So on the client side, we've also released an app, so for deal rooms, so access document, collaborate on documents as well. And then things like hybrid working, and we work with Matt on Usha to do that as well. So I think that's all the things that we've been doing to trying to compete in a flexible working environment. My magic wand, I'd like to give all the best lawyers from the large city firms a month in our office to experience our culture, our working practice, so they could see what life would be like and to bring all their clients with them.
That's one. Next to you, Martin. What about you?
Yeah, so tech's quite a big part of the way we work, and we've got various dashboards again that give us sort of data information on what's going on, where we are. We use tech as well to look at workflows, look at profitability. You know, if there's areas that we can automate, we'll do that definitely, because that's always going to be good for the business. And we'll also use it, an element of it within marketing, so automating what we do, how we communicate with clients, how we drive that forward. So yeah, tech's a big part of the way we work. And a magic wand, gosh, how many things? I think a lot of it's about focus, actually, and making sure that we're delivering on the things that we do best, and we're doing that really well. I think that's where we are.
Cool. Colin.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of start by saying that you can tie the sort of discussion into pricing. So we all know, and it's, well, the last report I did, that one of the key areas of dissatisfaction of customers and clients with law firms is price of various things. Usually it's not the price itself, it's about the communication of that price and keeping people up to date and informed. Okay, so that's an issue. Okay, so let's say we were starting a law firm here. We'd say, okay, so what we want to do, then we want to promote transparency. Let's really embrace it. Okay, so I would say, okay, so let's look at this and let's bring in people like Matt on this. So we could say, okay, so Matt, how would technology enable us to be more transparent with price? And Matt would have an answer to that, and that would be something like my portal or my law firm or whatever. That would be where I can go in and I can look at the policies. The other side of that equation is actually getting lawyers and people in law firms to be open and communicative about their pricing issues when things are changing. People were talking earlier about specifications changing. Telepathy, as far as I know, is a pretty awful way of communication. Don't assume people know what you're doing. Tell them. Tell them even when you've got nothing to tell them. Tell them I've got nothing to tell you about. And it's that simple thing. So I think you can take what we've been talking and knit it together with pay transparency. Our clients value transparency. The data suggests that. So let's deliver transparency. And let's not just say we're transparent. That's the key. It's easy to say we are a transparent law firm, full stop. Okay, that solved the problem. No, it hasn't. How do we deliver transparency in ways that make sense to our clients? Let's build the business model. Let's use the strategy first. Let's build it around it. And if I had a magic wand, it would be that everybody in the firm devotes one day every 2 weeks to BD and nothing else.
Right, thank you for that. And Matt, if I could just come to you for a final statement, because you've heard all these tech journeys now, and you obviously work with so many clients in the legal sector. So given a magic wand, what would you wish that they did that would make your life a lot easier?
Take stock of things, I think, probably more frequently. So whether it be, from a security point of view, I love a yearly review to take stock of any kind of gaps from a security point of view. From a data analysis point of view and insight and analytics, take time to take stock of where the gaps are within the insight that's being presented to them. So it's basically do that tech health check, to do that gap analysis, take time out to do it, rather than it be something that you're too busy to kind of engage with. So from a tech point of view, take stock of things, do a gap analysis, and think how tech is going to enable the business strategy, rather than it's just a shiny new toy that you add. I just want to say thanks to all the contributors on behalf of Access Legal today. Absolutely superb. I think that the lessons are there for law firms throughout the UK to be able to start with who they want to be, what do they want to be, how do they want to deliver it, and then implement it from there, rather than just keep on the hamster wheel of doing the things that they've always done. So yeah.
Thanks a lot. And thank you all for contributing today. It's been a really nice, rich discussion. Big thank you to Access and Matt for partnering with this discussion today. And I hope to see you all soon again for another discussion in the future. Thank you.